so excited to talk to you today about 4 advisor behaviors that influence whether prospects move forward, and more specifically, that really influence whether a prospect is going to move from that first meeting to that second meeting. The term prospecting is a pretty wide, broad term here in our space. It could mean, let's give you some strategies to actually get prospects in your pipeline. But today we're really focused on, once you have that first meeting, what can you do or not do to make sure that outcome that you want, which is getting them to the second meeting and then eventually converting them after that, actually happens for you. So a few housekeeping items before we kick off, because we've got advisors from all over the map on the call today, from all different organizations, different business structures. So I just want to say a couple of things. First, this webinar has been approved for 1 CFP CE credit. So if you registered and you added your CFP board ID number, we will report that back to the CFP board. I believe you do have to stay for about 50 minutes today, so most of the webinar. However, if you're joining us from Equitable Advisors today, none of that applies to you at this moment. We'll definitely have some other opportunities in the future that we're already working on, but just to make a quick note on that, if you are joining from Equitable, you can just disregard the CFP CE credit note. I will make a note, if you have questions about Jump from a product standpoint, because today we're going to cover a lot of insights and behaviors and coaching, and we're going to do some interactive exercises together. We do have Mitchell on the line from the Jump team. He's in the chat box, and he will make sure he answers any of your questions. Now, there's 2 ways you can ask questions today. The first, and what we recommend, is that you use the Q&A box. It should be on your Zoom control panel to ask any questions. For any comments and any of the responses that you'll give us when we do the exercises today, we recommend that you use the chat box. This will help us stay organized and help us streamline our Q&A session at the end, because yes, we will have a live Q&A at the end. And for those of you joining who don't know who the heck I am, and I've just been talking, my name is Diana Cabrices. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Jump, and my role is to educate advisors. I'm very lucky to be partnered with Liam, who is our Vice President of Strategy and Head of Insights. We make an awesome combination because Liam and his team, they are the research and the analysis engine behind the Jump platform and the data on the Jump platform. And they build these really cool playbooks and reports. And then I get to take that and run with it and use it as coaching opportunities for you. I've been in this space for about 10 years. My passion is helping advisors grow through marketing, technology, branding, and really psychology and the behavioral side of what you do with your business, which is such a big component of how you work with clients and the impact that you make. Liam, want to jump in real quick for your quick intro?
I think you did it better than I could. So good to be here and to see everybody excited to jump in.
All right, perfect. Let's get moving. We're very, very excited for this. And I just want to start off by saying the reason that this is going to be such an important session today is because historically, most guidance in this area, right, of prospecting and getting prospects to, take that next step with you in the process has been based on anecdotal advice, individual experience even. And now for the first time ever, we have access to data, thank you to AI and Liam's team, but we have access to real data that is grounded in empirical evidence that we can use to confidently say, here are things that you're doing that are hurting your outcomes with prospecting, and here's what you're doing that's actually helping. So this is based on real data, and we have a slide here in a moment that we're going to show you that really breaks down how we uncovered today's data. Okay, why does this even matter though? Let's even back up a little bit further. We know that organic growth, it's continued to decline a bit in this industry in US wealth management. It's down about it's down 2.8% and down about 6.2% since 2021. So we're just seeing a continual organic growth decline. This tells us something's going on in this prospecting area, right? And if you can see on the bottom right, around 33% is the conversion rate, the prospect to client conversion rate on average in our space. And we think that there's room to do better there. Liam, what else would you add here?
Look, the stats have existed for a long time. That organic growth stat, really what it means is that most of the growth in the industry has come from the growth of the market. Firms buy each other, but also the stock market has just been on like an exponential run in this time period from 2021 to date. I think we're at all-time highs. And as firms consolidate, like what will become more and more important is our ability to convert prospects to clients for each individual advisor to get the right clients at the right time for their practice. This is just really cool data that we're going to jump into because it's all about converting more of the prospects that you already have at your disposal. There's a ton of industry solutions that exist today to increase the amount of prospects that you could get in contact with. But from talking with advisors, those solutions are often met with like a double-edged sword. Yes, you now have 1,000 more prospects, but that means you have to reach out to 1,000 more people, schedule 1,000 more calls, have 1,000 more meetings, instead of just increasing the conversion of the maybe 100 prospects that you have in a year from 10 to 20, let's say. So anyway, we're really excited to jump in, and I think this data speaks for itself. But for the individual advisors, it's just about if you have somebody that you know is right for your practice, increasing your likelihood that you can convert them to a client.
That's it. It's as simple as that. So where did this data come from? Liam, I'm going to let you talk through this as well.
Yeah, so we have a ton of great partners. Jump is up to 35,000 financial advisors, a lot of individual RIAs, a lot of big firms. Some of the big firms, bigger firms, partner with us and allow us to analyze some of their conversational data. We anonymize that conversational data and then we ask questions to this natural language machine that uses AI to look at the conversations and say, did the advisor do this? Did the client do this? There's never any transcripts exposed. It's just capturing point in time data, but it allows us to ask questions like if the advisor, let's say, mentioned they had a CFP and we see all of the instances in which that happened, did that have a causal relationship with a successful outcome? That's what this data has allowed us to expose. For this specific project, we really analyzed about 8,000 conversations, but only used about 1,400 of them that met our eligibility criteria. I think the rest of this we can just kind of skip for now. If you guys will send this presentation out, and if you want to read the details, we have this and a more robust report in the background that somebody who's interested could read.
Absolutely. And a lot of what we're going to cover today has already been built into a playbook that for many of you, not for all of you, but for many of you is available in your Jump account if you use Jump. If you don't use Jump, I do want to say this is still going to be a very valuable webinar for you because we're democratizing this research, right? We have insights and we have behaviors that we're sharing. You can use that to your advantage right after the webinar ends into your next prospecting conversation. So whether you use Jump or not, you're going to be able to walk away from this with a lot of value. All right, and I see a few of you have raised your hand. Feel free to just type into the chat if there's any comments or things that you would like to share. Okay, so for the first time ever, we can really confidently answer this question that advisors have always had, which is what can we say or do during a prospect meeting to increase the likelihood that a prospect becomes a client? And this is the focus of today's entire session. So what we'll be covering? We've covered a little bit of the data today, but we're going to specifically show two behaviors that drive success, two behaviors that increase your chances of a prospect moving into that second meeting, and then two behaviors that hurt those outcomes, and then we'll roll right into the live Q&A. If we have a few minutes, we'll probably show the playbook and the scorecard functionality in the Jump platform. Otherwise, we'll just roll right into that Q&A. Okay, so what are the behaviors? So what you're looking at here in green are the two behaviors that help your prospecting outcomes, that influence a prospect to move to that second meeting with you. And the blue is what is hurting it. So we're going to really go in deeper on these, and we're going to do some exercises for each section here. But the first thing is stating a clear next step with specifics and offering a general financial review. So we know both of these behaviors are going to increase that second meeting probability, as you can see here, by about 17%, by about 13%. What's hurting it is introducing fees proactively. And I think this one might be a little controversial with some advisors on the line, but we're going to show you some insights here that might surprise you. And the second is advisor talk time exceeding more than about 3/4 of the meeting. So really the strongest predictors here were not even personality traits, they were just behaviors that you can absolutely adjust. That's the good news here, is like, we want you to be aware, right? We're going to create some self-awareness today, and then we will give you some tactics that you can use and start implementing right away to adjust your behavior and do it in a way that's going to support this. Now, Liam,
Two,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say two things to add here. Number
Yeah.
one, a question that I get all the time when we bring up this is, well, does it matter if they're male or female, or does it matter how much money they have? Does that influence their likelihood? The answer to that is yes, but this research is focused on only exposing the things that an advisor can control. You really can't control if a prospect is male or female, their income, all their profile and demographic characteristics coming into a call. These are things that you can control and apply across every profile and demographic characteristic. So no matter who you're talking to, these have worked within our research. The second thing I'll say is we only found that these four variables, is what we call them, have a causal relationship with success or failure. We tested over 120 variables. So we tested many more things than just these four on the screen, but these are the only four that through advanced machine learning says for sure it has a causal relationship. It's either causing success or failure by the degrees in which you see on the screen.
Super helpful. Thank you. And just to add a note, like the controlling whether a prospect is, male or female or has certain characteristics, that's more of your marketing play, right? That's your inbound, outbound marketing moves and
Right.
way you're marketing and positioning your business and how you're funneling prospects. And we might need a different webinar for that different topic, but today is like, once you have them, what can you actually control as under your behavior? So thank you for clarifying that, Liam.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to really start to focus on those first two. So as I mentioned, each section today, folks, we're going to include some coaching and then we'll do an interactive exercise. So get ready to get your fingers warmed up, get in the chat box. We're going to have a lot of fun here and we're going to learn along the way, most importantly. So what are the two behaviors that increase? As we mentioned, the first one is stating clear, specific next steps. So that's what you see up here at the top of the slide. This increased chances by about 17%. And the tip that I have here, or tactic, is when you think about framing the way that you set up a meeting or end a meeting, both are important, but actually we'll talk about which one's more important, is just having in mind, like, you want to create a very clear pathway for your prospect. So we call this the next step stack. And there's just, it's sort of a formula here. What happens next? When is it going to happen? What the prospect should expect and why it helps them, right? The single most powerful predictor is that when advisors don't just propose a next step, but they clearly state everything that is going to entail, then we know that is going to increase the likelihood of a prospect moving to that second meeting. But Liam, as we talked about yesterday when we were doing some planning, it's more important actually at the beginning of a meeting, which is something that I think it's always important, open and intro and outro. But I guess I was under the assumption what was more important was the end of a meeting, but it's truly the beginning. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And before we jump in, one thing to state clearly here, when we say this increases likelihood by 16.52 or almost 17%, what we're saying is if you have a prospect on a first call and you do clearly state specific next steps versus if you don't, the difference in their likelihood to agree to a second call is 17 or 16.5%. This is the most meaningful attribute or variable that we identified. So super important. And to Diana's point, it's very important actually to do this at the beginning of the call. It's a commitment device. If you don't state, hey, after this call, My goal is to get us on another call. We're going to do discovery today so that I can learn X, Y, and Z. And then in the next call, I'm going to ask you to join. We're going to do A, B, and C. If you don't do that at the beginning of the call, the prospect is kind of wondering the entire meeting, like if they have to commit to something. And it's like deviating their attention away from the conversation that is at hand. So that's why stating clear and specific next steps we found in subsequent research that we did is best suited first at the very beginning of the call and then restated at the end of the call.
Yep. So why are we meeting today? What am I going to ask of you today? What am I going to do with the information that you share with me today? What is the next step going to be? What am I not asking you to do or decide on today? Let's look at an example of this. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about what today's conversation is and what it isn't. My goal is to learn more about you, what prompted you to explore working with an advisor, and what's important for you financially right now. I'm not asking you to make any decisions today. If it feels like there might be a fit, the next step would simply be for me to do some homework and meet again to walk through what I'm seeing and where there may be planning opportunities. Right. And so that is a really good example here of like setting that stage. Just like guys, in the
Mhm.
beginning of this webinar, I painted that visual picture for you, right? We're going to have our intro, we've got our data, then we're going to have, 4 different behaviors, and in each section we'll have some tactics and an exercise. If I just would have said, all right, we're going to go right in and we just start looking at data, you might be like, okay, I don't know where we're at in this thing, but I'm just, kind of following along. But it's a lot better when you get clear and you state those specific next steps. So this is just, it's a pretty good example here, and one that, feel free to screenshot, or again, we'll definitely be sharing this with you at the end of the call. So really the point here is just to avoid any vague follow-up language like, let's reconnect soon, or I'll be in touch next week. That's super
Mhm.
duper vague. We want something to be more specific, and then using assumptive structure without being too pushy, right? So here's what I would recommend as the next step. That feels better than when would you like to meet again, right? So you have to have that authority a bit, right? And you're the one creating this pathway for them. Now, for the exercise, I would love if you could type in one sentence that you might use to either open or close a prospect meeting with more specificity. To help you through this, what I would do if I were you is I would think about the very last prospect meeting that I had. And my goal here is that it was a first prospect meeting that you had. Think about who that person is. Think about what you talked about. Think about maybe what you want to talk about if it's a call you haven't had yet, if you're planning on doing an opener. But just think through that. And then I want you to type into the chat how you would respond. Liam, anything to add here as people think through this?
Your example was beautiful because it makes it very clear that the commitment is low stakes for the prospect. A lot of prospects come in with this misconception that like you're going to ask them for money like after today. Like, and they get afraid of committing to anything. So I loved the way that you framed that. Like all you're agreeing to is essentially what you've already agreed to, which is to meet with me and learn more about each other. There is going to be no exchange of money. Like this is low stakes for you to agree to the next conversation. And that next conversation we'll get into more, but is the real chance to show even more value and increase your likelihood of success. So I loved your framing.
Thank you. All right, let's look through the chat box. So Julie, at opening, help me understand how you believe I or any advisor might be able to support you and your family. So Julie, this is a really good open-ended question that will have prospects talking more, which is actually another another behavior that we're going to focus on today with balancing advisor talk time. I think that could be one of the first questions out the gate. If you could back up from that even more, Julie, like before you even say that, and you're just kind of kicking off the structure of the meeting before getting into the meat, what would you say? Right? I feel like that's the perfect first open-ended question, but something might come before it. And we're getting another one here. Was there a specific catalyst, something that either happened to you that you want to happen that made you want to pick up the phone and reach out to a real financial planner? And look, you could start with these if you wanted to, but this is getting a little bit more into talk time and open-ended questions. And I still want you to think a little bit more about what is the big picture I'm going to paint with a little bit of pathways all in between before we really get in here.
Michael Bass had a great question, which is what happens if the prospect is skeptical and wants to see how the first meeting goes before committing? That's exactly like what you're dealing with, I would say almost exclusively with every prospect. They're really gauging their own interest. That's why stating the specific next step is so important. It's like, hey, today we're going to do this. And if all goes well today, all I'm going to ask you is to have another meeting. It doesn't mean that they have to commit to it right up front. You're not asking for them to commit before you go into the entire call. It's just stating, here's how today works, and here would be the next step. At the end of the call, you can restate that clear next step and ask for their commitment. And so you don't have to assume or ask them to commit to anything in the first 30 seconds of a call. It's basically like laying out an agenda for the call so that they know what you're going to talk about. And then, if all goes well, what they would be committing to when you ask them for commitment at the end.
Exactly. And actually, we're going to get into this on the next slide. So I love that this came up. Thank you, Michael, for sharing. Adam shared, my goal today is for us to understand your needs from a financial advisor and if we could add value for you. Yep, these are all great statements. Sorry, the one I meant to read was Manorama. Based on your email, I would like to meet with you to learn more about what you stated. But again, let's think a little bit deeper, right? So I want to learn more about what you stated. And here's the process that I recommend that we, the next steps that I recommend we take. So I recommend we start on maybe it's a 20-minute mini consult. I know a very successful advisor who that first meeting, he calls it a 20-minute mini consult. And he lets the prospect do a ton of talking in that meeting, right? He says, I think they talk 18 minutes, I talk 2 minutes, right? And then that is really going to let him set that stage for what happens in the next meeting. Okay, well, based on what I learned today, here's what, right? And even in the beginning, today's call is a 20-minute mini consult, and here's what I'm hoping to gather, and here's what could be the potential next step if everything goes well. Right. So just think about bookends. That's really what this is. These are bookends, intro and outro. And sometimes the bookends are more important than the books because without the bookends, the books just fall off the shelf sometimes, depending on the bookshelf you have. But hopefully that helps you think about this in a little bit of a different way. Okay.
Julie had a great follow-up, by the way. Before we move on, Julie Johnson's follow-up. Here's what I hope to do together today. Lay out the loose agenda, and then if it makes sense, we'll decide on next steps. That's exactly the framework. Here's what we're doing today. Here's what I hope to learn. And if we're a great fit, here's what I'll ask you at the end of the call. Just stating that at the beginning gives the prospect confidence that they know what the agenda is, and if all goes well, they have a good idea of what the next step will be. So perfect, perfect, Julie.
That's amazing, Julie. I love this real-time coaching, right? This is awesome. Thank you, Julie. Okay, let's move on. And we're going to move on to the second behavior that increases the likelihood of a prospect moving from that first meeting to that second meeting. And this is all about offering a general financial review, which you can see up here. And then for this one, we've got 4 different tactics here that I wanted to break down. So we just really touched on that first one in the chat. Position the second meeting as clarity, not commitment. So you can do this right from the beginning. And it could be, hey, the next step doesn't have to be a decision about working together. It can simply be a chance for us to review your overall picture, or maybe we can get even more specific and identify where there might be some gaps, some opportunities, or decisions worth prioritizing. Right? You're sort of positioning it as just, let me just continue helping you get this clarity, no commitment. That's actually what's going to lead them to a commitment. The next is find a hook. Where can you start small? So I love the general financial review. You can also, modify this a bit to be a little bit more specific. Maybe that is reviewing a tax return. It's an asset allocation review, a risk profile review, an estate planning review. If you use, estate planning technology where you can just upload their existing estate plan, like there has to be some sort of hook. By the way, that hook is obviously going to be different for every client or every prospect, and it's going to be unique to you because it's based on what you actually deliver. And when you find that hook, right, you show them, you don't just tell them. Liam, any comments on that? Because I see you nodding your head.
It really resonates with every industry. I'm thinking about it in my own context. So when I go and position Jump to a big firm, first we start by like telling them what Jump is. Hey, Jump is this great tool that does X, Y, and Z. And it's usually crickets. When we show them the magic, is what I call it. Like, here's how Jump actually works. We pull up the tool and show them how it works. That's when people start going, oh, like, this is the value of this tool. For a financial advisor, you can explain all day to a client or a prospect what you do, but showing them, providing like tangible value in some short form is so much more meaningful. The most successful use cases we saw in this research, when this was done beautifully, was hey, pull up your tax return from last year. Let me just take a look at it. Like let me see if I could have saved you $300 last year. Or pull up your asset allocation and let me take a look at it. It's basically showing them like your skill set. You don't have to always do it live as well. You could just say, sending me X, Y, and Z will allow me to do this analysis and provide that tangible value. I know there are rules against what you can and can't do. You can't create a full-blown financial plan for somebody who's a prospect and not a client. But there are these little tangible pieces of value that you can add during this prospecting process. And I'm no expert on them. I think this room could really teach me on what those pieces of value could be. But showing them the magic is what I call this. And it's just so much more meaningful than explaining what you do for an hour.
100%. The purpose of your prospecting call is not to explain what you do the entire time. It is to say very little. It is to add the bookend structure. It is to ask open-ended questions, maybe a couple that let them talk a lot. And then it is to find that hook and provide value. And so the other tactics you see here, right, provide immediate value. That's like the biggest takeaway here under offering a general financial review. And you're making this entire review centered to the prospect. So a good example here of something you could say is by the end of our next conversation, I can help you get a clear view of what's working, what may need attention, and what your next few priorities should be. So you just made that next step completely about them. It's what they need to be paying attention to, what they should be prioritizing. And this could be more specific. This is just a general example, but maybe it's the estate plan or the tax return review, like whatever your hook is with them, you kind of wrap that into that next step, right? That offering of that general financial review. Okay, I'm just going
Mike,
to quickly take a break and look at this chat. Liam, if there's
yeah,
anything else you want to add, feel free.
I was going to say Michael had a great comment, which is
Okay.
like, what about the concept of a second opinion? That's exact. I think that is like a great opportunity to provide tangible value. Like you're having money manage. The average high net worth client has 7 different accounts. That includes like their 401(k) and their self-directed brokerage. But they're undoubtedly getting advice from multiple people. Providing a second opinion is tangible value. So that's one way to just offer a general financial review of some sort of documentation, their taxes, their estate, their trusts, their financial plan, their asset allocation, so on and so forth. I love that, Michael.
Me too. And create your game plan for this, right? If you have a prospect who's coming over to you to get that second opinion, and maybe it's not even based on another advisor, maybe it's like, this is what AI said, and I would like a second opinion to what AI said. You have your game plan for that. Oh, okay, I can help you with this. I've helped other people with this. Here's exactly what we're going to get into. Here's the next step, right? And then you start going and going. So that is a really good comment. Thank you, Michael. Okay. Let's see, Adam. I see many financial advisors using Asset Map to provide a quick financial x-ray to do this commentary financial review. Absolutely.
Yes.
We did a webinar with Asset Map not too long ago, the Jump team, and then in some other endeavors of mine, I also just did a webinar with Asset Map. I could not agree more. Asset Map is an incredible prospecting tool because it also just allows you to get that bigger picture on what their financial situation looks like. But then you take that and you put it in a visual map for them. And that is
Mhm.
just so much easier to understand. Actually, the concept is very similar here, right? Those bookends, that game plan that you're giving them. Maybe you could call it a blueprint, whatever words you want. That's very similar to what Asset Map is doing with their financial picture. It's creating that sort of blueprint for them. A lot of people, I think the latest data is like 60% of us are visual learners. Don't quote me
Mhm.
exactly on that. But that's exactly what we're doing when we show them an image of their entire financial, house, if you will, and all their assets. But this is also what you're doing verbally. So you can verbally paint pictures, guys. That's what that book ending does. That's what that blueprint does. And that is just one of the biggest tips I can give anyone. I don't care if you're an advisor, if you're a CEO of a large, Fortune 500 company, you need to be able to verbally paint pictures for your audience, whether it's one person or 5,000 people. That's what makes you more successful. Okay, I got on a little tangent there. I'm sorry because I love talking about speaking tips and that kind of goes right with it. But anything else you'd add here, Liam, before the exercise?
No, I actually love that comment about Asset Map. We love the folks at Asset Map, Adam Holt and his team, and we have a deep integration with them so that if you're having a conversation with a prospect, that data can be integrated directly from the jump conversation into Asset Map instantaneously. So,
Cool.
just a great point by Adam Carrera.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so here's our exercise, everyone. Love for you to type in the chat. What is one tangible piece of value, that hook, you can provide in the second prospect meeting? So, what are you doing? Basically, is what I'm
Mm.
asking. Even maybe if you have an incomplete picture of their entire, financial situation. What's something that you're doing? Let's inspire one another. Let's give each other ideas.
And it could be an offer, right? Just for the second meeting. It could be, hey, here is the value I'm going to provide in our follow-up conversation, right, Diana?
I'm sorry, I was reading the Q&A box. Can you ask that again?
It could be an offer. It doesn't have to be, hey, I'm going to do this right now, but hey, I want you to send me X, Y, and Z so that I can do this. And this thing is the value. So it can always be, we know that not a lot of advanced financial planning analysis can be done live, but it's almost like the promise to provide value if you need, some time in between your first and second meeting to do it.
Yep, that is spot on. And someone said in the chat, well, actually, let me pause for a second. I want everyone to take a moment with this exercise. We'll give you a minute, about 60 seconds here. Okay, it's not often that I have silence on my sessions, but I'm practicing the power of the pause because I'm teaching that to advisors. But I'm going to look at what some of you said in the chat. So Colby said, review asset allocation and inform them of any overlapping funds. Review
Mm,
stock options to understand when a prospect should exercise them or when they will be taxed on them. Awesome. That's,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. I need that one myself. I could use it more. Colby, you could review my asset allocation.
Yes. Someone said, or Scott said, a deep dive into a specific strategy that addresses a specific pain point mentioned in the first meeting, especially if it will reduce an immediate tax burden. Yes, I have found my husband is a financial advisor. I say this probably on every webinar, but I do get so much inspiration from him and watching him in action. But yes, that is his angle as well. I mean, almost always everyone wants to save money on taxes, right? So it is such a good angle. A list of the clients covered versus uncovered. unaddressed financial risks. Jason, same thing. In our second meeting, we can discuss strategies you can use to minimize your taxes. Ooh, Matt, I like this one. Where is your emergency fund? If it's not in a high yield savings account or money market fund, you could be missing out on thousands of dollars. And that's
Mhm.
as like simple as it gets. But as you have probably experienced, Matt, there's a lot of Americans out there that don't really have all of this set up properly, right? Or don't have a high yield savings. They've got a ton of money in a checking account and they didn't even really know that about a high yield savings or what the benefit was. So it could get as simple as that. You know your clients, you know you target, who you attract, and what they need. Okay, this has been awesome. Thank you guys for typing in the chat and just engaging with us. This is what makes this fun, right? We want to hear from you. We can't see you, but we love hearing from you. Really quick, there's one question in the chat. So are you saying in the first meeting, many advisors are gathering all the numbers to paint the asset map in meeting two? Yes and no, because with asset map, you can also just send a link to any prospects before that first meeting, and they could fill it out before the first meeting. But that doesn't always happen. So it really just depends.
Yeah. And it's very easy to just fill in the details. You don't have to take the notes. The client, if or the prospect, if they don't want to respond or don't have the time to, they reveal a lot of that in the first conversation. So absolutely, yes, that is what's happening. It happens multiple ways, to Diana's point.
Awesome. All right, now we're going to get into the two behaviors that decrease the likelihood of a second meeting with the prospect. So let's dive into this. So in the beginning of the webinar, we showed you all of the behaviors. And the first one that is hurting outcomes here is high advisor time. And this is decreasing the chances that a prospect will move into that second meeting by about 12%. And if you were on our past insights and coaching webinar that Liam and I hosted 2 months ago, you've probably gotten some exposure to this, and we coached on this, but we're going to keep bringing it back because it is that important, and it's showing up not just in client meetings, but it's showing up in prospecting meetings. So Liam, I want to let you set the stage because this is your data and it's so good, and I just think you say it better than anyone. What does our audience need to know about high advisor talk time and hurting their chances?
Yeah, common misconceptions in financial advice are that you should always let the client talk more, but you're really paid to give advice. And so that requires you to talk a lot. And so what we're not saying is make sure the client talks more than you. And it's different for different contexts. But in these prospecting meetings, what we found is that if you start talking above three-fourths, three-quarters of the call, your likelihood of them being interested in a second call just starts to significantly decline. If you talk more than 85%, it's even a greater decrease or reduction in likelihood and success than 11.8%. It's another 3%. So I would say there's no right or wrong, but there is a cutoff that you should try to adhere to. And the way that you do that, Diana, we'll get into some strategies, but there's some just like really common ways to get the client talking. The client talking, though, has never been more important or valuable than it is today because of tools like Jump, note takers, and there's many out there that do this. If you get a client to talk on a monologue for 10 minutes, in the past, that meant you had to keep up with the conversation, take the notes and the action items, so on and so forth. But because note takers automate all of that unstructured 10-minute dialogue information turns into structured insights that you can act on after the call that are in the post-meeting summary. So the prospect or the client talking is just gold, and it's never been more valuable. That's what I would say about this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in the technology aspect, right? This is the cool part about AI and using a tool like Jump is, man, you want them to talk. You want that monologue, and you don't have to be head down taking notes the whole time where they're just saying the top of your head. You can be present, you can listen, and then after you're going to get some really good insights. So, a couple of different tactics here. The first one is use the ask before advise rule. And I think this is just important in general. But when a prospect tells you, they have a specific need, whatever that looks like, maybe it's college planning or just estate planning or something specific, you're probably, as you listen to them, you're probably already thinking in your head, oh, I know exactly what they need. They need this, they need that, they need Roth IRA, we need to do rollover, whatever it looks like again. But what we encourage instead is, before you just jump right into here's exactly what we should do, which I know might sound weird compared to what we were saying a second ago, but before you jump into this tactics and strategies that you want to implement for them, we just ask you to pause and ask another question, right? And so really this leads into the second one, is by asking more questions, especially open-ended questions, you make them feel heard. So let me give a quick example on ask before advise. You could say, before I react to that, can I ask what has made this feel urgent right now? That's just an example. You're just kind of taking a moment to pause. And then with open-ended questions, if you have a prospect that says something like, hey, I'm worried that we're not prepared for retirement. Well, what's making you feel most uncertain right now? That's an open-ended question. They could talk for at least 3 minutes on that one. Or what would feeling on track actually look like for you, right? So you're setting yourself up to allow the prospect to talk more. Using reflection to slow yourself down is another really good tactic. So for example, you have a prospect that shared something with you, and instead of advising or giving strategies, or even before you even ask that open-ended question, you could just say, hey, what I'm hearing is that this isn't about just retirement income. It's about wanting confidence that you're making the right decisions before it's too late. It's almost just like a nice sort of habit to get into. Take what they're saying and put it back on them, reflect it back on them. You could add some context and you could make it an empathy statement, but we're not going to get into that today. We did that on our last webinar. Hopefully some of you were there and you've started doing that. But just reflection will help you slow down, and it will give you both that moment to sort of take pauses. And then the last time is what we call airtime checkpoints. So if you build this in to your process, you're going to increase the chances that your prospect will talk more. That's what we're doing. We're opening up the floor for them. So a very simple example. I've shared a lot here. Let me pause for a moment. How is this landing with you? That's it. It's just a simple airtime checkpoint. The open-ended questions, though, is really where I want to focus. I think it's the easiest way to wrap your head around this. And a terrible open-ended question is, how are you doing today? Yes, it's an open-ended question, but it's a really basic one, and they could literally just respond with one word. So we don't want to do that. We want to instead let them, ask a question that's going to set them up to talk more. For example, can you tell me a little bit more about why you sought me out today and what you're hoping to accomplish? Right? Or tell me a little bit more about why you feel that you need a financial advisor to help you with your financial situation. Open-ended, and it's going to let them talk. That's what we want. I did put this data in here, Liam. It's kind of a little, I just think this is so important because I think it helps create that self-awareness. We showed this on one of our last webinars. You might have seen it before, but this is a very interesting dichotomy here. So we have advisors who say, hey, my clients spend most time talking. And then based on data, we actually see it's quite the opposite here. So really, it's advisors are spending more time talking. I believe this is probably from client meetings, but it's a similar thing here with prospects.
And one thing to note, like clients talking more doesn't lead to higher satisfaction. There's just a cutoff. In prospecting meetings, it's 75% or greater. That leads to a decrease in success. But in client meetings, that's not necessarily true. And success is different in client meetings. Sometimes there's a client meeting where you really have to like ask a lot of questions, take them through the process, teach them a lot. You could be talking 80% of the time. It doesn't mean that will result in a bad outcome once you've established a relationship with them. But early on in these prospecting meetings, because they all are so structured and follow a similar format, or you're asking discovery to learn about them, to teach you about them, there does seem to be that sweet spot in our research. So just one thing there, this isn't a gotcha, like you're talking too much. This is more of like just for this specific situation, just be cognizant of the talk time. And if you're getting up in that level, it's a great time to readjust and ask open questions.
Yep, exactly. Let's actually do that. I'd love to hear from all of you. And I'm just going to quickly check the chat here. Percentages. Okay, so let's look at this exercise. I'd love for you to type in the chat one open-ended question that could realistically get a prospect talking for at least 3 minutes. So this is a prospect question. So it's a question you would ask in a prospect meeting to get them talking. We'll give you about 60 seconds here.
While people are typing away, Timothy had just asked, noticed in meetings, the percentages sometimes don't always add up to 100, sometimes over 100. What's happening there? I'm guessing Timothy is mentioning the analytics tab within Jump. Um, People talk at the same time. Diana just like said, while I was talking. So we both get like a slight percentage. And so it's over 100% because it's not always mutually exclusive. Diana and I can you should see our individual conversations. We'll just talk right over each other. We're probably both at 100% in those, but that's why, Timothy, it's just like the amount of time that your voice is talking divided by the amount of time of the meeting.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And we're getting some good ones in. What keeps you up at night? That's a deep one, Michael. I don't know what all will come out of that, but I feel like it's going to be beyond financial, which is, I mean, it's all intertwined, right? Jennifer, what would you like to accomplish by the end of this meeting? Colby, what happened to make you finally decide to schedule our call today? A couple of you, what do you hope to get out of our meeting today? Imagine money wasn't a concern. What would you do with your time? Such a beautiful question.
Yeah.
What are some things that stoke your fire, makes you excited? I like that too. Right? There's so many different ways to ask a question to get the similar outcome, right? To get people talking. It is often questions that allow them to open up emotionally that do that. But even as something as simple as what are we hoping to accomplish by the end of today's meeting? And maybe you could add a little more context to that too. What really prompted you to reach out to me and what are you hoping to accomplish by the end of the meeting? That might give you a little bit better chances of having them talk for at least 3 minutes. Okay, this is great. We're going to keep it moving because we've got one more behavior, and then I want to open up for Q&A, and if we get any time to show you the Jump platform, we will. And then there's going to be a way for you in just a moment to book a one-on-one demo of the Jump platform if you're interested in seeing all of this in action, because yes, Jump is actually taking your meeting recordings and surfacing insights back to you to make you better. And you could plug all of this into a scorecard that literally sits in every prospect call with you, and we'll tell you at the end of the call how you did. So you get coaching here, and it's very helpful to you, but you can actually use technology to help you with this too. All right, the last thing, and probably the most controversial, is proactively introducing fees. When you proactively introduce fees, which many of us have been taught we should do, actually it is hurting our outcomes here with prospecting. And I'm going to launch a poll really quickly. So I would love to know from our audience, when do you typically bring up fees? So you should see a poll that just populated on your screen. Is it before the prospect asks, only when the prospect asks, at the end of the first meeting, or in the second meeting? And while this runs based on the time that we have, I'm going to just say a couple of things here. Again, when advisors involuntarily or voluntarily introduce fees before the prospect asks about them, then we are seeing that the likelihood of a second meeting decreases by 6%. What we are not saying is don't be transparent. We believe in transparency, but we are saying answer fees when asked directly. Absolutely. That's the first tactic here. But don't really lead with fees before the prospect understands the value. I'm going to say that again. Don't lead with fees before the prospect understands the value of what they're getting. That can hurt you. And the best case is getting a commitment to a second meeting before you actually really dive deeper into your fees. If you can get them to commit to that second call, you're in a much better place to talk about fees than you were, let's say, at the beginning of that first meeting. So I'm going to end this poll and I'll share it back with everyone here so you can see what your peers are doing. Looks like the majority of you are bringing up fees at the end of the first meeting, but I'm actually really I am surprised, I guess, to see that many of you are also doing it only when the prospect asks. Some of you in the second meeting, and then there is a portion of you all that are doing it before the prospect asks. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful to you because again, we want to drive some awareness here based on data. Liam, what would you add to this?
Well, we came up with a stupid analogy yesterday for this. We were talking about the new movie, The Odyssey, which I'm very excited to see. And I guess how I equate this to our lives is like if somebody said, "Hey, come to this theater and pay $20 and, I'm going to show you a movie." I'd be like, "Well, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not even interested." And they could be like, "Well, no, I'll tell you more about it when you get here." I'm like, "No, there's just no chance that I'm like going to pay $20 for a maybe." But if you show me the trailer and you tell me who's in it and I see all the Rotten Tomato reviews, take my money. Like, and also I'm getting like $15 worth of popcorn and soda. But the point is, like, the parallel that I'm trying to draw is if you just have a discovery call and you've basically explained what you can do, you've done discovery, it's hard to show the real value of what you do. And advisors, if you ask 100 people on the street what an advisor does, and none of them are advisors, you'll get 100 different answers because it is such a complex job that is so nuanced and includes so many different skill sets. You have to be a behavioral coach, you have to be a financial whiz, you have to understand complex state attacks, financial planning situations, and so it's really hard to show that in one meeting. And if you bring up your fees and you're not able to really show the value of what you're asking for, it just turns people off. They're failing to see to draw that line between what you're asking for and the value you provide. So the more time that you have to show them that value before you say what it costs, the better. That's what the research shows. And so it's not saying never bring up your fees. It's just saying give yourself a chance to show them the value of what you do before you bring it up.
Yeah, don't speed them into evaluation mode before they truly understand what what they're evaluating, right? Like what they're going to really get out of this. That was so helpful, Liam. Thank you. And just to touch on some of the other tactics here, don't volunteer fees as a credibility move. I think there's advisors out there who think being so transparent from the very beginning of the call is the right ethical way to do it. And I'm not picking on those advisors. Everyone has their own opinions, but certainly I think that is again what I just said. You're kind of putting them into evaluation mode before they actually understand the value. Use a bridge when fees come up a little too early. So if you do have a prospect that jumps right into it, you could say something like, "Hey, I'm happy to talk through fees. We're still early in the process. I haven't defined the exact scope of what you'll need yet, but generally speaking, our fees are, maybe X, Y, Z. Maybe you share some planning fees, your AUM fee. And once I understand your situation more fully, I can give you a clear recommendation and a clear scope on what your fees would be with us, right? Or what the fees would be for this relationship. And it really, might not change based on the prospect, but it's certainly, if they're not doing a financial plan with you, their overall fee is going to look different with you. Keep this conversation focused on fit and value. Cannot say that enough. You first need to understand, then you need to clarify, then you identify value, you provide value, and then you discuss the cost. So this is based on data, guys. So we all have our opinions about it, but we see here with our data what is actually going to hurt your chances here. All right, so we already launched the poll here, so I'm going to skip this. One thing we did want to do is show you in action on the platform what it looks like to activate a playbook that can help you build scorecards for your meetings. Again, scorecards are exactly what they sound like, right? They're going to sit in your meeting with you and they're going to help you identify where you did well and where maybe you didn't do so well. Before we open screen share, I do want to just say, if you want to book a one-on-one demo with the Jump team, this is a link to do it. If you are an equitable advisor, though, however, please do not use this link. I have another link for you on the next slide. That's the link that you're going to want to use. I'll also drop a link in the chat box, but this is for equitable advisors, and this will lead you to a landing page where you can learn more about how to sign up for Jump and join one of our group webinars that we do for equitable advisors. Again, I'll put this in the chat. Liam, would you like to share your screen?
Sure thing. I can do that.
And then we are going to kind of roll right into the Q&A. I do have a couple of minutes over to stay. Liam, do you have a few minutes just in case we go over?
Yeah,
Okay.
most certainly. So
Thank
this
you.
is our test account, Mr. Ted Lasso, one of our best and brightest here at Jump. And you are on the homepage of Jump. If you're familiar, you will locate this Insights tab on the left-hand side of your global nav. You can click into that. You'll see, you might see a subset of these. They're not available for everybody. It's based on your account settings. So if you're a part of a big firm, they limit some of the things that are available based on the approval process. So more to come if you are a part of a big firm wondering where these tabs are. And you can start to see things like what's trending in my conversations, the objections, which is super important for prospecting meetings. Something we didn't touch on today is we actually surface what are the common objections that are coming up just in prospecting meetings that your prospects are saying. So for my prospects, or Ted Lasso's in this case, this month, more people are saying that they prefer to DIY. And then you can jump into those objections and see who exactly said it and what meeting. But the playbook, what we just went through, actually shows up in this playbooks tab. And everything that we showed is in this increased likelihood of a second meeting. You see this and you can review the information that we just talked through. And then if you want to put it into practice, you simply activate the playbook. The scorecard is where you can apply it. You hit apply. And then if you have scorecards active, you go to scorecards and then it's live in your scorecards. You can now track every meeting, how you're doing across the four components that we talked through. These four don't align because this is an old scorecard, but it'll allow you to see exactly how you did in every meeting and how it aligned to the four components we talked with. Did I offer a general financial review? Did I state clear and specific next steps? Did I, bring up fees proactively before the client did? And it'll give you that instantaneous feedback so that you can adjust in the future. I think that's it, Diana.
So cool. Thank you for that. I'll take back over screen share. We have a couple of questions in the chat box that we can. Here we go. I've been signed out for some reason of my slide deck. Gotta love it. But we do have a couple questions in the chat if you want to just take a quick peek, and then I'll get this screen share pulled back up.
Yes, I see book the one-on-one demo. Do equitable advisors get access to scorecards is something that Michael asked. Michael, I'll have to check with your account owner. I think Michelle and Anthony are people over at Equitable. So we'll check with them and get back to you. If it's not on today, it's just something that's in the approval process because we're trying to get your guys' experience to be as good as it can be. And then in the Q&A, I see, does Jump provide any insight on intonation? That's a great question. And Diana, I think you are better suited to answer that.
I don't believe we provide insight on intonation, but we can certainly coach on it because I think it's really, really important.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? I would actually love to get back to you on more specifics on what is evaluated when in the insights. So I see though that you are an anonymous attendee. If you want, you can just use the chat box and send a direct message to me with your email address, and I'd love to respond back to you and get some more insight for you on that. But for right now, I'm inclined to say no. I don't think we have anywhere in our dashboard that highlights intonation. We do
What is
highlight.
intonation?
Okay, intonation is the like how your voice can go up and down, right? So
Ah,
I'm talking really loud right now versus I'm going to try to take a step back.
gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay, so yes, I can answer this. It's
Okay.
difficult because across multiple platforms, everybody has different meeting recording types, and essentially, like what we use is the live transcription ability to create these insights. So it's not necessarily hearing a voice to produce these insights. So it's difficult. It is possible, But I would say, Diana, maybe your coaching is better suited to give feedback than our dashboard at this point.
Yeah, we'll do more coaching on this. I actually love that you asked this question because
Yeah.
it shows that you are focused on this, and that's pretty rare. And I think it's also so important. Uh, again, we're kind of getting into like speaker coaching, but speaker coaching, it applies to a 1-to-1 meeting or a 5,000 to 1 meeting. So love that you asked. If there's any last minute questions, now is your chance. Feel free to put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A box. At this point, the chat box is probably okay since some of us have already hopped off to our next meeting. But thank you all. This has been so, so wonderful. We are so grateful for the opportunity to get together with you and to be able to engage with you and hear from you and learn from you and teach you what we're learning as well. Okay, so Cassie says, please repost the link for the demo. So Cassie, if you're not an Equitable advisor, then the link I'm just posting now is for you. And then for any Equitable advisors on the line, the link I just posted underneath it is for you. And I will say, for Equitable advisors, we will be doing some more coaching webinars and content unique to your organization. So today's webinar was truly industry-wide, but we wanted to give you the chance to join us regardless. Actually, Equitable advisors wanted to give you that chance. All the awesome people there, like Anthony and Michelle. But there's just a few little differences here in this webinar. And we got some love. We got some love for Jump. Love the Jump tool. Highly recommend. Thank you, Timothy. That means a lot to us. All right. Well, with that, I'm looking and I think we are out of questions and we're kind of out of time. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to catch you on the next webinar. We'll be doing one of these every single month where we bring our insights, our coaching. Don't miss it. It's just going to continue to get stronger and stronger. And if you have any questions, you know where you can find us, but definitely use the link here to book a demo. Really, our goal is to take you through and help you understand how it can help you specifically, because every advisor is different. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Diana. Bye-bye.